Hello, I'm Rebecca the Maths Lady, here to help you become a fabulous maths teacher so that all your children love their maths and become fluent and creative and confident with it. This is video 9 in the series on teaching maths to children in English Year 1, which is 5 or 5 to 6 year olds, and it's all about teaching fraction in Year 1. Now, fraction in Year 1 is all about halves and quarters. Everything you do all year long should be shot through with halves and quarters whenever possible. This video is going to be in 5 sections. We're going to cover linking doubles and halves. We're going to cover multisensorial experiences of quarters and halves. We are going to look at odd and even numbers through array and linking that to halves. Then we're going to look at finding halves of numbers, and we're going to finish with finding quarters of numbers. Linking doubles and halves is our first quick win. Whenever we're teaching our double numbers, like double 4 is 8, we can also teach our halves. Half of 8 is 4. So if you didn't do that when you were doing doubles, go back, review all your work on doubles and link it to halves. It's a great chance to recap your work on doubles and make that link. And here's a link to my video where we covered doubles of numbers in Year 1. Moving on. Deep multisensorial experiences of halves and quarters. This is the work on halves and quarters that is not about number. It's about doing halves and quarters in all sorts of different contexts. So what kind of context am I talking about? Well, we want them to see a circular representation of halves and quarters. One way to do that would be with your pizzas. I like my Learning Resources Pizza Fraction Fun. They can search through the box and find the quarters and the halves and learn to spot that they're different to all the other fractional sizes, which we're not looking at this year, but that's a good context in which to see them. And they also have a magnetic version for the board if you want to play around with those. But you don't need to buy resources, you can make circles of paper. Now, as with all our work on halves and quarters, we want to focus on the idea that halves are 2 parts of a whole, quarters are 4 parts of a whole, and those parts must be equal. So we want them to see situations where things are cut into 2 parts but they're not equal, and you have a conversation about those not being halves. And similarly for quarters. Let's move on to some other contexts. You can certainly do squishy paintings and explore the halves. Are they perfect halves? You can also do them with quarters, just putting the paint in one quarter of the paper, folding it down, folding it across. Are they perfect quarters? The world isn't perfect, but you can still explore the concept. And it's great to have those discussions because children come to understand that quarters must be equal. Now, both of those images, the pizzas and the symmetry art, showed quarters going that way and that way. We also want to look at quarters of length because it develops the imagery of cutting things this way. So we can look at skipping ropes, we can look at pieces of paper, just got a piece of paper, we can fold it and see the halves, and we can fold it again to see the quarters. So it's important to work on halves and quarters of lengths. And of course you can work on width or height as well. Our next bit of multisensorial imagery is with weight. We can send the children around the classroom to explore whether they can find something that's half as heavy as something else. And of course they want something that's repeated so they can get 2 things the same. Put them on the balance scale and try and balance them with one of the other thing. They may not be able to, but it's a great exploration. It gets them to develop a deep sense of halves and wholes in weight, and it's great work on weight. And they can do the same with quarters. And you can do things like if you've got a ball of clay and you want it split in half, they can check whether they've got halves, exact halves, the same size by using the balance scales. And they can do that with quarters as well. It's just the case that each of the 4 parts they have to get has to balance with any of the other parts. Capacity. We can do lots of work with capacity just like we did with weight. If you've got lots of different containers around the room, can the children find one that will contain half as much water as another container? And they can check that by seeing if the larger container will fill the smaller container exactly twice. And similarly with quarters. None of this may work perfectly, but it's great investigation, it's great language, it's really developing children's deep understanding of halves and quarters. And then there's time. If you start a slow beat clap, can your children cut that in half with their claps? Can they cut it into quarters? They may well need some help. But again, it's fun to try. Right, let's chat about odd and even numbers because they're really relevant here. I introduced them with some 2 centimetre squared paper that is cut into even numbers like this in rectangles that are always 2 squares wide, and odd numbers that are rectangles with an extra square on top. Here's an example of a few more of these. There's a particular reason why it's important to use this structure for playing around with odd and even numbers, and that is that some teachers see even numbers as being numbers you can pull apart into 2 halves, and some teachers see even numbers as being numbers that are in the 2s. And it's really common that a teacher is focusing entirely on one structure in their own mind and is not thinking about the other structure at all. Now this beautiful structure brings both ideas together because an even number will fold exactly into half and show 2 equal groups, and an odd number won't. And an even number is also, if we fold it this way, an exact number of 2s. And an odd number isn't. You can also explore this with children walking in crocodiles, walking in pairs. Have we got an even number of children in the class today? If we have, you're going to make a beautiful crocodile with an exact number of 2s and 2 columns of children the same size. That's an even number. So you can explore this topic by giving children lots of these, asking them to count how many squares there are in each and sort them into the 2 groups. You don't even need to tell them what the 2 groups are. They'll puzzle that out, and then you can ask them what the 2 groups are. This activity can lead to all sorts of discussions and activities about even and odd numbers. Go wherever you want to go. But if you can, introduce a structure that links even numbers being an exact number of pairs and it being possible to cut them in half. Finding halves of numbers. Obviously this follows directly on from our work on even numbers, because if a number is even, we're going to be able to find half of it. If you did beautiful art pictures, you might have put some spots on it and children can count the total number of spots and they can see half of those spots. Maybe a ladybird's work. We certainly want plenty of situations where children have physical objects and they have to share them into 2 equal groups, and they learn the strategy of 1 for me, 1 for you, 1 for me, 1 for you, and dealing out fairly. It's great to work with halving numbers of Duplo bricks because then you can stack them and make sure that your 2 stacks are the same height. Can they halve 3? Well, we've already told them they can't when they're looking at arrays like these. But what about if we give them 3 cupcakes to share between 2 people fairly? I suspect they can halve 3 then. Have fun, investigate, explore. And finally, quartering numbers. Well, once they've got the hang of dealing into 2 groups, they should be able to cope with dealing into 4 equal groups. You can also look at the structure of halving something and then halving it again. They should experience both plenty of times with all sorts of different objects, also with counters and with Duplo bricks or multi-link or something like that too. And you can try it with your arrays, because we can split that between 2 people. And if it'll fold in half this way, can then split it between 4 people like that and see how many squares in each quarter. But of course we couldn't do that with 6, could we? Or could we? Because if you've got 4 children who are very hungry and are trying to share 6 roast potatoes fairly, what's going to happen to those roast potatoes? Well, everyone's going to get 1, then what's going to happen to the other 2 roast potatoes? If we use the same experiment, this shows that 1/4 of 6 is 1 1/2. That's really advanced maths for year one. But why not play around with it? They don't have to get it. You can just have fun and see where it goes. So in summary, year one is the year of quartering and halving, and it should go right through your whole year. Embed it in everything you can possibly embed it in. Hopefully this video has given you plenty of ideas, and we should repeatedly draw out the idea that if the parts aren't equal, they are not halves or quarters. By the end of the year, you should be able to put your class in the hall and ask them to sort themselves out so that a quarter of the class is in each corner of the hall. And that can lead to all sorts of problems because you can easily end up with 1, 2 or 3 children left over, and those children can't be cut into halves or quarters. But all of that is great conversation, great experience, laying down wonderful foundations for their future understanding of maths. So your children are going to be awesome at fraction. Next Thursday, I'll be back with a video on measure in year one. We've covered a little bit of it today, but there's still more to do. The usual quick reminders: if you think this video is useful and you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And when you click on the subscribe button, click on the bell button to get notifications when new videos come out. If you've any questions, please comment here, ask your questions on YouTube or in the Facebook group where you can download the planning resources for free that accompany these videos. And the Facebook group is Expert Primary Maths Teacher Planning. And if you've got something about maths teaching at primary school that you're passionate about and would love to share, please get in touch. Here's an example of a collaborative video I did with someone who got in touch. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're loving your teaching. Bye for now.